How much have you wanted to know about the healing fluid in Star Wars known as Bacta? Greetings Acolytes and welcome back to the archives. One of the staples of the galaxy far, far away are Bacta tanks, large cylindrical tubes of an unknown substance which is known to somehow completely heal the wounds of anyone who steeps themselves in it. Bacta has been known as one of the most useful tools throughout the years of the galaxy, able to bring our heroes and our villains back from the very brink of death, even to the point of healing lightsaber wounds. But what exactly is Bacta? Is it truly a miracle drug of unknown science? But the question we have to ask you today is, how much do you really want to know about Bacta? If your answer is way too much, then join us as we go on a needlessly exhaustive deep dive on everything there is to know about Bacta in Star Wars. Before we begin, please drop a comment below on what other aspects of a galaxy far, far away you would like us to explore in excruciating detail, and we will have a look. We do read your comments and are always looking at suggestions for new holocrons to create, and if you're new to these archives, then the Force has guided you well. Reach out and crush that subscribe button so that you may join our acolytes and increase your knowledge on our daily holocron uploads. Now, let us begin. Believe it or not, Bacta is actually an organic chemical substance that is either translucent red or blue in coloration. Contrary to what you may think, there is no water in Bacta tanks, as the entire tank is filled with the viscous Bacta fluid. Bacta itself has a quite simple recipe, consisting of two main ingredients. They are called Alazai and Kavam bacteria particles, and was also a major export on the world of Verkul. Alazai itself was a bone-white bacterium growth from a delicate type of fungus known as the Zorzi. They were grown and processed in specific processing plants on the native world, and even though the slightest disturbance to the fungus could cause it to release its spores and wither, Kavam was a special liquid chemical that naturally came from the secretion glands of an insectoid species known as the Vractics, who were native to the planet of Thyfera, the same planet where the Alazai is grown. But for a less disgusting alternative, Kavam was thankfully synthesized. Both of these bacterial particles were mixed with colorless gelatinous fluid known as ambori. We don't exactly have much information on this chemical, but we believe it could have been some sort of binding agent or an activator to keep the particles alive. The way Bacta actually worked was that when a patient was exposed to it, the bacterial particles sought out wounds and promoted rapid tissue regeneration, while even preventing the emergence of scar tissue. Almost any wound could be healed without even the worry of marks being left behind in most circumstances. What was really huge was that Bacta was worked in treating injuries across a massive spectrum of species almost anywhere in the galaxy. As such, Bacta was highly sought after and considered the best medicine around. But an important limitation of Bacta is that it cannot regrow what is already lost or dead. This means that species cannot naturally regenerate lost limbs. Bacta can only help cover over the wounded spot. Bacta is described as being warm to the touch. The Bacta liquid could aid in the healing of concussions, internal organs, and broken ribs. Furthermore, it could be placed in small dishes to help regrow fingernails, mend cuts, burns, and other smaller injuries. It wasn't magic though, but an accelerator to the body's natural healing factor. This meant that injuries that would normally take months or years to get over could be fixed in a matter of days or weeks with Bacta therapy. Bacta could be administered in a myriad of different ways, not just with taking a dip in a whole tank. The method of administration depended on the severity of the wounds, as Bacta existed in the form of disposable patches, direct injections, a salve, or even oral consumption, as an edible form of Bacta did exist, although they appeared as little muddy bottles. However, this wasn't introduced until sometime around the year 9 ABY, and it had a terribly chalky taste. In one of the other most bizarre applications of Bacta, there existed a device known as the Bacta grenade. Medics would often hurl these things into groups of allies during combat, and the grenades were made up of two halves that would separate in order for the Bacta to spray out from the inside. While a bit haphazard, this was helpful in a pinch. Speaking of this, how did Bacta actually feel? When one was submerged in the tank, reports varied from enjoyment of the experience. Many, though, did not like how slimy it felt, while others found the experience oddly comforting. Most Bacta patients felt as if they were being swallowed alive upon being submerged in the substance at first. As such, many doctors injected sedatives first, and the subsequent ways of relaxation would slowly overcome the patient, sending them into a meditative state before being submerged in Bacta. While most retained consciousness in Bacta, the combination of drugs and Bacta commonly led patients to feeling like they were drifting into another world, with some comparing it to being in a mother's womb. Upon emerging from the liquid, many patients have described themselves feeling terrible, with them missing the feeling of serenity that Bacta gave them. However, some would find the opposite to be true, describing their bodies as feeling light and free from all pain whatsoever. Bacta was described as smelling excessively sweet and leaving a lingering sour taste that was described as being like a flat or a stale lum. Lum being an extremely strong type of Carillion ale. Apparently, after emerging from a Bacta tank, that smell and taste stayed in the mouth and nasal cavity for weeks after immersion. The full story of Bacta actually begins sometime prior to 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, with the substance known as colto. Those who have been a part of the armies of the Old Republic will be quite familiar with this substance, as this was the medicine of the Old Republic era. Colto was made of an actual unknown substance from the aquatic world of Manan, and it was made by the Selkath species as their primary export. The Selkath had a monopoly on all of colto, since it was produced somewhere deep in the water. To this day, researchers aren't entirely sure where it actually comes from, but the Selkath legends claim it was produced by a creature, a Phyraxan shark known as the Progenitor, though several scientists believe that this creature was actually guarding the coltal harvest, and they speculated that this rare form of shark actually fed off of it as well. This was an extremely valuable commodity during the Jedi Civil War of Revan's day, and the Selkath had notoriously taken a completely neutral stance in the war. Jedi and Sith alike had a very limited supply of colto, and so they sought a way to get more of it and to gain an advantage in the war, but all attempts to synthesize the medicine would fail. Back on Manan's main export city, the Republic, the Sith, and Imperials all had to follow the rules of the neutral territory of the Selkath, otherwise none of them would receive the medicine that they needed, making them an extremely important group during the Jedi Civil War. However, as more wars continued to ravage the galaxy, the demand for colto was quickly increasing, causing the price to skyrocket astronomically. But alongside colto, Bacta also emerged, having been offered to the galaxy by the Vratic species. At first, Bacta was seen as a cheaper alternative, but soon, everyone learned that Bacta was actually superior to colto in just about every single way, rendering colto obsolete. Eventually, no one could afford the incredulous prices of the colto market, and the entire market crashed as a result, as Bacta began to outsell them, and soon, replace colto altogether. The Vratics were willing to share their technology of Bacta, but Bacta could only be made on their homeworld where they needed the resources. The Zurzi fungus and their own gland secretions were abundant there, and they were the two main producers of Bacta. The Zoltan Corporation and the Zutra Corporation, who constantly fought over who could control the manufacture and the sale of Bacta. This was because the source of most conflicts on the planet of Thifera, the Zuptra Corporation, was primarily human-led, and was always trying to seize power over the world so that they could monopolize the trade of Bacta and get exceedingly rich, attempting to cut out the other corporation. They made especially strong moves during the rise of the Empire, but they were constantly thwarted by the Zoltan Corporation, who were more sympathetic to the native Vratics and the Rebel Alliance. They could tell that the Empire was doomed to fail, and so they were ready to support the winning side, the Rebellion. Bacta was exceedingly important in Star Wars, and was a valuable commodity. There have been 2 times in the lore that militaries attempted to sabotage the effects of this miracle medicine. At one point, Palpatine had attempted to create a bioweapon which neutralized the effects of Bacta in order to unleash it on his enemies. But thankfully, his scientists would never get the chance, as the project was stopped before it reached fruition. The Yuzhong Vong would then later attempt to use this research to develop a weapon of their own, one which targeted those with the Alzai compound in their system, and introduce a virus which would rapidly kill them. But again, this was stopped before it was unleashed onto the galaxy. Medicine of any kind should just be left alone in warfare altogether, beyond simply medicine. But yet, the nefarious mind of the Vong and Palpatine were seeking to turn Bacta against the general populace. This was Palpatine's plan, to take something so critical during times of war and to poison it. I hope this video did a good job of establishing how important Bacta was and Palpatine's ultimate plan to turn it vile and sinister, showing that he knows no bounds to the limits of his cruelty, turning medicine into an act of war. But anyway friends, this was almost everything that you needed to know about Bacta, and its surprisingly incredibly important role in Star Wars as an ecosystem as well as during times of war. So, after learning this, would you ever want to take a dip in Bacta yourself? We really enjoyed getting into the nitty-gritty of certain aspects of Star Wars lore, and to highlight it, whether you use this for roleplay games or just for your own information down the line, I hope you enjoyed. And if you enjoyed these style of deep dive videos, be sure to let us know that you would like to see more, and what would you like to see us explore and uncover in Star Wars in the future. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching the channel and supporting us as we try to make different types of videos, and as always, may the Force be with you.